let's start with the dust collection system. Right over here, the main dust collector is a wall mount 1 horsepower. This pulls 517 CFM, that's cubic feet of air per minute. That's connected to a cyclone separator. The benefits of this cyclone separator is that you turn your dust collector into a 2-stage collection system. This creates kind of like a vortex, like a cyclone inside the can, which causes the majority of the chips and dust you collect to fall to the bottom. So now you can just empty this canister, it's a 30-gallon trash can, when you get full, rather than emptying these bags about every 15 or 20 minutes. This system up here will cycle the air and create a spin around the room. That's the exhaust part. And the intake over here consists of 2 filters. The outer filter is a 5 micron, the inner filter is a 1 micron. So this does a good job, considering the size of this 2-car garage, of pulling all of that nasty, suspended, very fine dust out of the air. What we have here is a thickness planer, which I'll explain how it's used in a second. Have a nice table saw here, and got a drum sander here. We have a spindle sander, belt sander. What we have here is a nice band saw with a 3/4 inch nasty looking Timberwolf blade for resawing. Resawing meaning you split a piece widthwise right down the middle and open it up. Book match sets are the preferred pieces of wood to use on instruments. Then we have here a nice drill press that can be used for all sorts of things besides drilling. I have a scroll saw here. This is one of the more recent additions. What this allows me to do is cut lines that are thinner than a pencil lead. So you can get very precise cuts, and you can make very tight radius cuts. There's your miter box, miter saw. Allows you to cut large stock down to manageable pieces, which is the first step in building these. How do I get from rough maple to something like a billet or a blank that I'll use for a guitar top or a neck? This is completely clean, squared, surface planed. To get from there to there, let's take a look at how that's done. I'll cut this to the dimension of like a top. What I'll do is take that over here to the thickness planer. This side has been surface planed. You notice I still have a ways to go on here to get these marks out. Now once I've surface planed both times, which is referred to as S2S, I have to square up one of the edges and make one edge perfectly flat. I've done that right here on this edge, so now I have a perfectly squared corner here. How do I do that? Take it over to this benchtop joiner. This benchtop joiner has a spiral cutting head or a cylindrical cutting head. You set the depth, and this is perfectly squared. This rail here has been squared with the machinist square. So anything going in, you feed with these push paddles. You want to keep pressure against the fence and also a little bit of down pressure to maintain that perfect 90-degree planing surface. Everything has to be kind of planned out to where all your equipment is connected and plugged into this dust collection system. Now the big thing is, how do you keep them all from being on at one time, and how do you allow the dust collection to be assigned to just one piece of equipment as you're using it. What I'll do is go down here. This main blast gate will allow me to collect dust from the thickness planer. On the rear side, you have another hose, which is difficult to see, but there's a blast gate on that as well. So I keep everything closed, all these blast gates on all these pieces of equipment. And if I want to use a particular piece of equipment, I open the blast gate. This is powered by just a standard shop vac, and I use this on most everything with 2 1/4 inch ports. That would be this spindle sander here, and of course this belt sander, disc sander combo. And this would be the hose. So we've taken our rough maple here, or rough any board for that matter. We've thickness planed it and squared the edges. Now we have blanks that can be used for tops or body laminates. Now this is still 4/4. I've lost about, I don't know, maybe a 1/16 of an inch with the surface planing. What I'll do then is take something like this over to the bandsaw. I will resaw on the bandsaw, meaning I'll cut dead center down this blank here. And when I'm done, I will open it up, and then you end up with a very symmetrical grain pattern. I'll run those pieces through the thickness planer just to get the rough edges off, and then from there I'm ready to use a template, something like this, to trace a body. And these are all original body designs, trying to offer some sort of variety here. Now we've taken rough lumber, and now I have a top and a back book matched. You'll see the symmetry in the grain pattern. And now I'm ready to start building. I've done the exact same procedure on these boards to create neck blanks. They're 40 and a half inches long, 4/4 wide, and I will do laminates. I'll rip some of them very thin just to use some hardwoods, combination of hardwoods and lighter woods, dark woods, colored woods, and maple is my go-to to do a pretty cool neck laminate. So once these pieces are made, we will clamp those up. Get them all cut together, and these are my favorites. These are the Best H series pipe clamps. These things are awesome. You get a lot of clamping power, and they keep everything nice and straight. Plus you can push the bottom of all your pieces onto the pipes, and you have kind of like a true level surface when you're clamping these. Once that's done and it cures, I will end up with something like this. And here's your neck blank that you can probably notice is on every one of my guitars. This is I think it's a 7-piece. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 3 strips of white ash. This would be Brazilian cherry, and this is walnut. So I get a nice, as far as weight, it's a very nice weight because I've got the majority of this, 2/3 of this blank is domestic walnut. It looks very pretty, sounds good, but I've got these very hard strips right down the center to give extra rigidity and strength to the neck. And then after that, I start drawing out, based on designs that I made, how to cut this into one piece with your headstock, the neck taper, meaning the thickness of the neck from the nut, and also the thickness from the rear of the neck. And then once that's done, I'll get to the body, join the 2 wings as they're called, and then you start having something that looks like a guitar. Drum sander. Why drum sander over thickness planer? You run into issues with highly figured woods on planers. So see these chatters and chips. Now this piece right here, see that big notch taken out? The planer tore out a piece of the figured maple and blew it out. Well, now I got to work that out, because in order to get these pieces glued and clamped, you can't have that stuff in there. You're just going to have voids throughout the wood. So I went ahead and purchased a 10-inch baby drum sander. The drum sander has aluminum oxide paper on it, and it's only meant or intended to remove very thin layers at a time. The aluminum oxide sandpaper is attached to a drum that's 5 1/4 inch diameter, and this, you can adjust the head. This is your drum here with underneath, you got your dust collection there, and this is a conveyor. You can set the feed rate. So what I'll do is, when I start getting down to the actual thickness I'll be needing on highly figured woods to prevent and avoid any blowouts or tear outs that can ruin my wood, I'll start getting down to the final thickness with this guy. This conveyor belt has a variable speed control. You can feed it very slow, which is usually the smartest option. And that way I can sand these things down to very precise tolerances and not worry about ruining wood. And I came across these machines called carving duplicators, which have a router with a dust hood here. Notice I built all this because I wasn't going to pay $7,000 for one. That was a ripoff. Gave me something to do. So what you have basically is, the way this works is you have a template that's pre-carved to one of your designs. You've already carved the contour, the shape of the top. What you'll do is take a blank master, you'll put it right here. Now underneath here, what you have here is handles for moving the carriage. This carriage goes up, down, it'll go left, right, and it goes forward, backwards. So what I'll do is put a blank right underneath the router and that dust hood to collect all the dust being made. I have something called a stylus pin, which will fit right in here, and it will have something on the end of the threaded stylus that is the exact same measurements and dimensions as the router bit in the carving side. So the idea is that you can replicate a carved top and get pretty good accuracy in general. I mean, the bottom line is you have to remove material that isn't going to be part of the guitar. You just have to get rid of a lot of meat, as they say, to get down to what is something you're going to be working with. So this is intended to just basically rough out tops. I'd get them down to the shape and a rough taper, a rough kind of topographical carve, give it kind of a bell-like quality. When you put a finish on, it kicks the light differently. And this is a spring-loaded carriage here. So you have a little more downforce on the carriage, which is good. You want this thing to kind of float, but you want a little bit of downforce to make sure that you're always going to easily be touching the wood, but it isn't going to be dropping hard and digging into it. If you had too much pull from the rear, you're going to be pushing down the whole time. You don't want to do that. So rather than do a counterweight, which is the most common method, I went ahead and went spring-loaded because I wanted to eliminate the amount of weight on the carriage for these guide bars. So I can slide this back and forth, go up, down, back, right. You get the idea, I hope. Then I'll move it back here, set it down. Now, of course, I've got this connected to a dust collector. And as I said, this is a different setup here for 2 1/4 inch ports. Cyclone run by a shop vac, but as you can see, dust collection's going to be taken care of. Using something like a router or duplicator or any kind of sander, you're going to create a massive cloud of dust, and you just don't want to deal with that. You want to take care of that right on the front end. So I may have overlooked something. This is it. Small, modest, but very effective for what I'm doing. I get it all done out here.